Welcome to It's All Geek to Me, a podcast where two friends experience popular nerdy franchises for the first time. My name is Leah, and this season my co-host Kelli and I will be traveling to a galaxy far, far away as Kelli experiences Star Wars for the very first time. And I'm the expert. Let's dive in.
And we're back for Star Wars. I don't know if we're calling these episodes 1, 2, 3 because the Star Wars movies are called episode whatever the episode is.
I feel like that would confuse people. I feel like we should call this Star Wars A New Hope, episode 4,
the
part 1.
longest name ever. Okay, so we're on part 1 of episode 4, A New Hope, which I'm feeling a little hopeless after having watched the first 40 minutes of this.
Hopeless?
Yeah, I'm sad, aren't you?
Well, I am a little sad, not necessarily because of the movie, but because I actually have COVID right now.
Hey, you kind of sound sick.
Yeah, I know I sound sick, so I felt like it was just worth mentioning it to our listeners that I do have COVID. So throughout all the parts of episode 4, which we are recording today, I apologize for my sick-sounding voice, but luckily my fever is broken, most of my symptoms are gone, my throat just feels terrible, so...
Well, hopefully, as you watch this movie, it will make you feel a little bit better.
To be honest, I wanted to watch this movie when I was sitting in bed sick the past few days. So I'm like just waiting to feel better, knowing that we were doing this in a few days. It was something nice to look forward to for me.
Yeah, there you go. Well, for all of our listeners, we've got a lot to go over. Let me tell you, I have never heard talking as fast as the talking in this movie. I was not prepared for this. My hand is cramping from writing so many notes. I just wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I guess like I never realized how quickly that they were talking and how much information and exposition we are getting in this first section of the film, but so much information is given.
Yeah, well, I guess we may as well dive in because we don't want these episodes to be too long. But yeah, we dive in straight into a ton of exposition. Actually, this is something that I probably should have known, and it was another one of those memories that was locked away until I saw it. But it did start out with, on the screen, it said, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away," which I see all the time on everything. So
yes, this is a staple of Star Wars.
And then we get another staple, which I also should have remembered. I'm not sure that I 100% knew that it was Star Wars, but the scrolling yellow text.
They call it the opening crawl.
The opening crawl. Oh my gosh, they actually have a text option like that in the editing program I use. That's hilarious. But yeah, so we start off with a ton of text, which honestly, I was going to write down everything that it said, but it was just scrolling on by. So I just kind of wrote down the gist of it, which is that there was a civil war going on and rebel spaceships are fighting the Galactic Empire. And the rebels have gotten some information on the Death Star, which is an evil spaceship, I guess. They talk about it a little bit more later in the movie.
Well, I think here in the crawl too, they do give a little information. They say it's a spaceship that can destroy a planet.
Yeah. Ooh,
which is scary.
It's definitely scary. And then it also says that they've gotten this information. Specifically, Princess Leia has gotten this information. So we open up to, honestly, me being very confused. There's like a bunch of lasers just shooting around. We see like these planets and these two ships are going. One's super small, one's really giant. And I'm not sure, is one of them the Death Star? Because I thought the Death Star was round.
No, so the larger of the ships is with the Death Star. It is part of the Empire. I believe it's just called a Star Destroyer, and then the smaller ship is the ship that Leia is on.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, there's the space battle going on. There's all sorts of shooting lasers, and then we see inside the smaller ship, there's there's 3 robots actually. One of them mysteriously disappears for the rest of at least this section of the film.
So we actually call them droids, not robots.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I wrote robots the whole time.
You know what's actually funny is in episode 0, I called C-3PO a robot, and then I was like, oh, I'll just correct it later when we get into episode 1, and that they are called droids.
You're probably going to have to correct me a few times, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, so we've got these 3 droids. So we have C-3PO, who I didn't realize was him at first, because if you listen to episode 0, Leah was actually drinking out of a C-3PO mug, and I thought you were pulling it out right now again. She's drinking out of a different mug today.
It's just the water.
But yeah, so she pulls out this Lego looking guy, and I was expecting there to be a yellow Lego guy at some point in the movie. That's not what C-3PO looks like. So he is, first of all, gold. And second of all, he's way less weird looking than your mug.
The mug is honestly horrifying in comparison to like what he actually looks like.
So we have C-3PO. We have another variation of C-3PO, and he's like a champagne color. And he's the one that I haven't seen since this opening shot. And then we also have R2-D2, who I also had locked in the recess of my brain.
I feel like it's so hard not to know the names of all of the main characters of this.
You know, I know all of them, but the weird thing is they really don't say their names a lot. So there were some characters that I just wrote down like this guy because they just never say his name. You're just expected to know it. So we see these droids, they're shook up. And let me tell you, C-3PO and I have a lot in common because he seems to catastrophize everything just in general. And I appreciate that because same. So he's freaking out and he's like, oh, we're just all gonna die. Everything's going wrong. There's no escape. Princess Leia straight up gonna die for sure. So then we see the soldiers at the ready, and I wrote down that they must be the rebel army, but I don't think that they're officially rebels. I think they're just secretly rebels now that I know a little bit more information. And then these stormtroopers break in. We actually got this shot of the bigger ship kind of enveloping the smaller ship, and we knew the stormtroopers were coming, so everyone's prepared. And then there's just this crazy laser battle going on. It's some really fun CGI going on here with the lasers and the smoke and people falling and stuff.
So a fun fact about the lasers. So, you know, they're coming out of things that look like guns, but they're blasting lasers out of them. Yeah. You may have heard them call them this, or I know that they will at some point during the trilogy. They're called blasters.
Blasters. Oh, that's way cooler than gun.
Yeah, it's just like a fun little word. I like that too.
Because I just have been writing down laser gun.
Yeah, nope, they're called blasters.
Okay, I like blasters. So then we get to see my fave character of all, Darth Vader. He's popping in. He's really breathing heavy. Like, it's super loud. And now that I hear it, I think that's like one of his staple things. That he's just like...
Yeah, and he's like breathing through a mechanism.
Yeah, and you can tell. He's definitely breathing. So then we cut to who I recognize is Princess Leia. And let me tell you, I started cracking up because I have seen people dressed up as Princess Leia, and I knew that she has those cinnamon buns in her hair, but I wasn't fully expecting it to look like that. Like, I don't know, I always see like sexy versions of her, and it's not so intensely cinnamon bun-esque. Yeah. And I just wrote down, LMAO, is that who people are into?
So Carrie Fisher, who plays Princess Leia, she's an author. She's written memoirs. She's written other kinds of books. But in one of her memoirs, she talks about them finally deciding on that hairstyle because they had gone through all these different ideas, and then they come in, they do this to her, and everyone's like, this is it. It's the best. We love it. And they ask her, do you like it? And she's like, yeah, I love it. And inside she was like, what the heck have they done to me?
It's so dumb looking. It's so dumb looking.
So she knew.
I'm so sorry to say that because it seems like there's just a whole generation of people who are just into that look.
Listen, Carrie Fisher knew though. She knew it was not it.
Okay, good. I'm glad she knew. But anyway, so we see her for the first time and she is giving R2-D2 something. I thought she was kind of like putting a little card into him. Yeah. There was some stuff that I wasn't totally clear on, and then the next scene I realized what it was. So I'm going to try to correct myself as I go, but I'll also tell you what my initial thoughts were. But yeah, so then she looks up and she runs away. So we just see her for a split second. So then we see Darth Vader, and he is just like strangling this guy who I assume is some sort of commander or captain of the ship. And he's like, where are the Death Star plans? And the guy's like, this is a diplomatic mission. We aren't associated with the Rebel Alliance. And Darth does not believe him. And I think he kills him.
Yeah.
He kills him.
He does.
And then the stormtroopers find Leia. They set their guns. No, what are they called? Blasters? They set their blasters to stun, which I've also heard that being said before. There's already so much stuff that I am already somewhat familiar with. And then they shoot her and she falls. And then they're like, tell Lord Vader we've got a special guest for him or something like that. And then we have R2-D2, and he is a droid on a mission. Let me tell you, he is very set on his mission. And I was getting a little frustrated because I thought that he was going to be able to talk and he doesn't. So we just have to kind of figure out what he's trying to say and he just beeps.
Yeah, a lot of times though, like C-3PO sort of translates what he's saying, but there actually was somebody who created R2's beep pattern.
No.
And there's like certain
goodness.
flourishes, and so to them it's like his voice is very specific. Oh, Kelly's rolling her eyes.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of cute because it's kind of like, oh, Lassie, is there a kid in the well kind of thing? But it's so funny to me that people have an understanding of what he's saying because I was struggling.
No. It's not that people understand what he's saying, but there was a whole art process that went into creating what his beeps sound like.
Oh, I thought you were saying a fan.
Oh, no.
Translated it and made a whole language like beep, 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 beep.
No.
Because that is
no. Just that somebody on the creative team did a lot of work creating R2's voice. Because he does have personality traits. He's really sassy. He's very independent.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he definitely gives me kind of like dog vibes where obviously you can't understand what a dog is saying, but you can kind of tell from their inflection and the way they're moving around.
Yeah, I totally agree with that with R2. And I like the little relationship that him and C-3PO have and that C-3PO can understand him, you know?
Although, can I just go ahead and make a somewhat outlandish prediction? Because I feel like I don't 100% understand C-3PO's motive. And I feel like he says some stuff that I think is a little suspicious. And I'm not 100% sure if I would consider him to be a good guy at this point.
Well, the thing with droids is he's very loyal to his masters.
Yeah.
So, you know, as long as he's in the hands of the good guys, he might be good.
I guess, but I don't know. He's just acting a little suspicious. He acts a little suspicious later, which I'll talk more in depth about why I feel that he's a little suspicious. But yeah, I mean, I like his catastrophizing nature, but I'm a little worried about him. I'm a little worried that he's too easily swayed. So we'll find out. But anyway, so R2-D2, he's getting a little frantic right now, and he is going into what I soon realized was kind of an escape pod thing. And C-3PO's like, hey, don't do that. You're going to get deactivated. You're going to get in trouble. But he's doing it anyway. They hear stormtroopers, and C-3PO's like, all right, I guess I'm coming with you. And then they hop out, they get onto the escape pod, and then they shoot away from the ship. And we actually see some of the bad guys who, I don't know if those are technically stormtroopers or if they're just like manning the evil ship, but they were like, oh, hey, someone's on an escape pod. And I guess they scanned it and they were like, no, there's no life forms in there. We're good.
Yeah, so if they're not in the stormtrooper uniform, then they're some sort of higher ranking official.
Okay, so yeah, so they just thought that maybe the ship short-circuited or something and it just accidentally released a pod. So that's kind of what they say. And then Leia is taken to Darth Vader, who a lot of people are referring to him as Lord Vader, but I guess, is Darth his first name?
So this is something that I feel like changes throughout the lore, which I can't go too much into, but at some point he is being referred to by other characters as Darth. But what we find out in like later trilogies is Darth is actually a title, not a name. But I think that George Lucas comes up with this stuff on the fly. So at this moment, I would say that Darth is his first name, but I do believe that that changes throughout the lore as it expands. It wasn't all fully baked, all the ideas.
It was actually at this exact point when she starts talking to Darth Vader that I was like, this is the fastest speaking movie I have ever watched in my entire life, because Leia's like, blah, 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 and then he's like, blah, 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 and I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what's happening. But the gist of that conversation is that she's mad at him and she's like, why'd you capture me? And he says, I know you're part of the Rebel Alliance and you have my Death Star plans. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is a diplomatic mission.
They're on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
That's starting to make a little bit of sense because we hear about Alderaan a little bit later. With Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Okay, so what exactly went down there?
He's like, I know that you're a rebel. She says, no, we're on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan. And he's like, no, it's definitely you. And the other people around him are starting to get concerned because they're like, if we're wrong, we're going to really upset people. Yeah. And he's very certain that he's correct.
Okay, so that's basically what happens. They take Princess Leia away, and then one soldier or whatever is basically warning Darth, like, this is a bad idea if she's not actually in the Rebel Alliance.
Yep.
So he also thinks that the escape pod must have had the plans because they cannot find these Death Star plans anywhere on the ship. So he sends another ship after them, and he's like, we gotta find them. And meanwhile, we see R2-D2 and C-3PO have landed, and they are in some desert world, which they actually never said the name of, as far as I'm aware.
They did never say the name, which I made a note of to tell you. The name of that planet is Tatooine.
Tatooine. Oh my gosh, you have tattoos in your body.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good name.
Good joke.
Thank you. If you guys want to appreciate my joke, you can let me know on Twitter. So they're in the desert, and C-3PO is complaining a whole bunch, which I can fully relate to. He is not pleased to be there, and
he did not want to go on this adventure at all.
He does not want to be there. And you know what? I feel like I'm starting to appreciate these series that we've been watching because there always seems to be someone who I can fully relate to who's like, I straight up do not want to be a part of this. Like, I'm not having a good time. I just want to be home. And C-3PO is that person for me. So I appreciate him. But R2-D2 still on his mission. So he beeps that he's got this very important mission. And C-3PO actually gets really mad at him. And he's like, no, like, you're being a doofus. I'm going to go in the other direction and don't even bother following me. Which I thought was a little dramatic for being a robot / droid. So R2-D2 is getting a little sad from that. And you can hear his little sad beeps as C-3PO is walking away. And C-3PO is like, no more adventures. I'm done. Which actually made me sad for a minute because it's like walking away from your dog and being like, oh, I don't want to play with you anymore. So I was sad for a second.
And I always like thought that R2 would like follow him, be
That's
like, oh,
what I
fine.
thought was going to happen.
But he didn't. He's on his mission.
No.
He's got to go.
Yeah,
and
I actually really respect him for that. Although I don't know if it merits respect because he's a robot? Droid.
He's a droid.
I'm so sorry. But yeah, so we see C-3PO doing his thing first, and he's still in the sand because at one point he did say he didn't want to go in the direction with R2-D2 because it was too rocky, which I get. He's a droid. He's just trying to walk on soft sand. So he's walking around. There's this really long, it almost looks like a snake skeleton that he passes, and then he turns around and he sees something glinting in the distance, and he's like, oh, it's a transport. I'm saved. And he starts calling for it. And I'm thinking at this point, this is a bad guy. This is the bad guys who have caught up with him. But it turns out that it's actually not.
Well,
kind of.
Yes and no.
Well, then we cut back to R2-D2. He's in the rocky area, and there's these like creepy, dark creatures following him. So you can't see what they look like. They're hidden, but they're in these dark red robes. They have glowing orangey red eyes. And I thought there was just one at first that just kept peeking out, but it turns out there's a bunch. And one of them jumps out and shoots him with some sort of electricity and shuts him down. And then a bunch of them run out. They're really small. I was actually wondering if it was children actors because they were really tiny.
Honestly, they probably were child actors. I'm not 100% sure though.
And you know what was kind of funny is they were making these little alien noises that kind of also sounded like babies. Like they were like... Was that a good impression?
That was an incredible impression. Did you catch what they were called?
I heard it at one point later in the film when Luke Skywalker says it. I think they're like Javas or something.
Jawas.
Jawas.
With a W.
Oh,
yeah.
I was actually really close
Jawas.
for not having written that down. Yeah, so we actually don't ever get to see what they look like. But we do see them carrying R2-D2 away, and they take him to what looks like a giant transport army thing. And I thought that they turned something off on him, but it looks like what they actually did was they put something on him, which we later find out keeps him from being able to run away from his master.
Yeah.
So that's what they put on him, and then they send him on into the ship. And then he is on this ship. We see this weird alien robot guy who's speaking in the alien language again, and R2-D2 wakes up and he's looking around. There's a bunch of other robots there. And so I was like not sure if this other alien was maybe like a mad scientist and he was going to use them to like do experiments or something. But R2-D2 just gets up and he starts wandering around. So I guess that's not what that was.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly who that was. I think it was just another droid.
Oh.
Maybe that droid was taking stock of the other droids that were in there. I'm not really sure.
Okay,
but
makes
essentially,
sense.
the Jawas are like looting these things
Yeah.
to then sell to other people.
Yeah, so I do find out that in like approximately 5 seconds. But first, we actually get a very joyful reunion between C-3PO and R2-D2. And
Yeah,
C-3PO is
the
really hyped to
besties.
see him. They're like cheering and having a good time. And then I almost immediately found out that the aliens basically just take these robots and then sell them to people. Oh,
Yes.
not robots, they're droids.
And they're not aliens, they're Jawas.
oh my gosh.
So whenever the subtitles say like speaking alien language, there's like many alien languages.
great.
They're pretty much all alien languages.
Okay.
They just don't specify what alien language.
Great. Love that. Okay, so meanwhile, we cut to really quick these stormtroopers. They're searching the desert. They have actually really cool dinosaurs. And I thought this was a very interesting juxtaposition because the CGI on those dinosaur creatures that they were riding around was weirdly impressive.
So, fun fact about that CGI.
Tell me.
So, actually, the version that we're watching is not the original release.
Oh, no.
The original release doesn't actually exist at all.
Oh.
You can't find it. And
Oh.
so much was changed. And every time it was re released, George Lucas would change it. So,
Oh, my
that
goodness.
original shot was just like two stormtroopers kind of talking to each other in the front of the frame with like nothing in the back. So, that was added in for the re release.
I was going to say, because it almost didn't feel like the same level of CGI as we have seen so far. Because, I mean, the lasers were not incredibly impressive. And then all of a sudden we have these dinosaurs that are like photorealistic dinosaurs. And it was just very impressive.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point that out. That's actually wild.
But there is a lot of that. In this movie in particular, I'd say more than the others, where George Lucas
crazy.
changed a ton to update it a little bit.
I have to say, if I was a lifelong fan, that would almost stress me out a little bit because I would start to wonder to myself if maybe I just didn't remember it properly.
Well, there are a lot of controversial changes, but we will talk about those in episode 4, part 2.
Okay. Deal. So basically the stormtroopers are just looking for the two droids that are missing, which I don't know if they actually know specifically that it's two droids, but they know that some droids escaped on the pod. And one of the stormtrooper points out that there are tracks in the sand, so they start to follow them, which is very ominous. So meanwhile, we cut back to the transport where C-3PO and R2-D2 are, and they realize that it has stopped and they're being herded out by the Jawas. And that's when I pretty much found out that they are being sold off. So then I wrote, oh, expletive, there's Luke.
It's Luke!
Luke Skywalker. So it looks like there's this sort of underground city / town, and him and his uncle are buying some robots. Just kidding. They're not buying robots. They're buying droids. I wrote down robots, so I'm going to have to keep correcting myself. I'm sorry about that.
So actually the little underground city or whatever, that's actually just their house. They live on a moisture farm and they're
my
moisture
gosh.
farmers.
Moisture? What
So
is
they live on a
that?
sand planet with not a lot of water. So they're farming for moisture. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Your sick
What do you think I
accent.
said?
I thought you were saying oyster with an M.
No, moisture.
Moisture. Sorry. Okay.
Like wetness.
That actually explains a lot. And that actually makes me a lot sadder about where we ended this because that means that there could only be two people that those skeletons were. Oh no. Okay, let me compartmentalize and forget about that for now. But yeah, so they are buying some droids and the uncle is picking out the ones he wants. He picked out one that looks like R2-D2, but he doesn't want R2-D2. And then he goes up to C-3PO and again, we have this rapid fire conversation that I just barely picked up on. And he's just going back and forth. I did hear him asking about moisture levels and stuff. So that makes a little bit more sense. And he was asking C-3PO a bunch of questions. Obviously, C-3PO passed the test because then the uncle is like, okay, I'll buy this guy too.
So specifically, Beru, who is Luke's aunt, Beru is the aunt and Owen is the uncle, and their last name is Lars. Beru calls out to Luke the first time we hear Luke's name said and says, Luke, remind your uncle to find a droid that can speak Boche or Bache, I forget what the language is, but she's looking for a specific language. And so Owen asks him, he says, I don't need a protocol droid.
Oh,
That's
he
not
did
important
ask.
to me. But do you speak this language? He says, yes. He says, okay. Also, are you noticing how short and rude everyone is being with the droids?
I am noticing that everyone is short and rude rude in this movie, period. Even the droids are rude to each other, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
everyone's rude.
But like in this particularly, C-3PO is talking and saying all these things that he could do. And Owen tells him, shut up. I just want to know, can you speak this language? So that's like a little theme that droids aren't treated terribly well in this universe.
Oh my gosh, maybe they're going to become evil. Who knows?
Could be possible.
You know. I don't know.
I know, yeah.
Well, anyway, so then Luke comes over and he grabs the two droids. So I'm going to call this one, for the sake of this conversation, the red R2-D2.
So it's not an R2-D2. R2 is like the model. D2 is the make. So I don't know what the make of this one is, but they're both R2 units.
Okay, so the red R2, I don't know if R2-D2 must have done something to him, because then he just starts smoking and R2-D2 is annoyed and he's like making his squealing noises. So I think R2-D2 had something to do with that.
It does seem like R2 schemed something, but I don't know how he could have possibly, but I always felt that way too.
Well, I also want to point out, I forgot to mention this, but this was when I started feeling a little suspicious of C-3PO, because C-3PO is just 100% on board with being bought without his pal R2-D2, and he's just like, all right, peace out. And he like looks behind him. I thought he was going to say, oh wait, you need to buy my friend too. But no, he does not care. And then later he's like, oh, this guy's good. Maybe you should get him instead, when the other R2 starts smoking. And then he's like, you should be grateful that I insisted on getting you purchased too. Which I was like, I feel like you barely did anything.
I feel like C-3PO is just so complacent to his master. He just wants to do a good job. He doesn't want to speak out of turn.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, these guys bought me. Well, I guess this is my life now. Here I go.
Yeah, and then he's just like, bye, R2-D2. I'll never see you again. Exactly. And I do want to point out, because this is going to come into play later, that he does very specifically tell Luke that he has worked with R2-D2 before and he's a good droid, okay?
Yes.
We'll talk about that later, because I have a problem with that.
Okay.
So then Luke is taking them in, which I wrote down to his city, but I guess it's just their farm, and he is cleaning them up, and C-3PO is hyped because he loves his oil bath and he's just having a good time. And meanwhile, Luke is scrubbing at R2-D2 and he is really upset. He wanted to hang out with his friends and do, I don't know, Tatooine things.
So it's not that he wanted to hang out with his friends. His friends have actually left. They've gone onto the flight academy and he was not allowed to go with them.
Oh, boy, am I bad at this. Thank goodness we have an expert.
No, I feel like that was super vague, if I'm being honest, because like later Owen talks about the academy and how Luke can go next season, but they never specify that much about it.
I think actually, now that you say it, I think the aunt does mention all of his friends are gone to the academy now.
Yeah.
So I think you're right about that. But it just seemed at the beginning that he was just annoyed because he wanted to slack off with his pals.
Yeah.
So he is annoyed and he's cleaning them up. And C-3PO just casually mentions something about the Rebel Alliance. And Luke gets really excited. And he's like, oh, have you seen Battle? And C-3PO is like, yeah, a bunch of times. Duh. Which is very casual. And I thought that he was bringing it up to maybe, I don't know, say something to Luke about the importance of what he just has been through. But no, he doesn't care at all. So again, I'm just like, I don't know if this guy's very trustworthy. So then Luke is trying to scrub at something on R2-D2, and it seems like there's something jammed in there, and he tries to get it out, and it trips this hologram that comes out of R2-D2, and it's Princess Leia, and she says, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And C-3PO, for whatever reason, says that this is a malfunction, which, again, I'm becoming very suspicious of C-3PO. Why would he say it's a malfunction? And then he also says he doesn't know who Princess Leia is. And I wrote down, is he lying?
Yeah, this was a little confusing too, because they were on the same ship.
I'm still suspicious, so that's what I'm just gonna go with my gut here, okay?
I think it's just bad writing, but go off.
And I also wrote down, Luke thinks that Leia is hot, LOL, because he is immediately enamored by her and he's like, who's that? She's pretty.
She's beautiful.
And Luke says he knows a Ben Kenobi. And I thought that Obi-Wan and Ben are very similar names, so I was wondering if it was the same person, which it turns out I am right.
Yay.
He
Smarty
is
pants.
trying to play the full hologram, but he needs to take off the little chip thing that the Jawas put on him. And he says, well, I think you're too too small. You're not going to be able to run away anyway, which is how I figured out that is what that little chip does.
It's a restraining bolt. And I think this is R2-D2 being a little sly, being like, oh, I'll play the whole message if you take the restraining bolt off. And Luke's like, okay, takes it off. But the real reason R2 wants him to take it off is so he could run away.
Yeah, and then R2-D2 still doesn't play the full message. So then Luke heads off to dinner with his aunt and uncle, whose names I didn't write down, but you said them.
Beru and Owen Lars.
And he says that he has a feeling that R2-D2 is actually stolen. And the uncle is pretty annoyed about it, and he just immediately doesn't seem to care about anything. And he's like, you got to go down to the shop tomorrow and get his memory erased because we don't care about that.
Well, Luke also mentioned that he thought that the unit belonged to Obi-Wan. And when they mentioned the name Obi-Wan, the aunt and uncle kind of gave each other a little look. Like, they know who Obi-Wan is.
I missed that a little bit, but then he does ask about Obi-Wan, and the uncle kind of brushes him off, and he's like, oh, he's not around anymore. He died when your father died. And Luke perks up, and he asks if Obi-Wan knew his father, and his uncle just shuts it down again. So he is just not having this conversation. And Luke decides to change the subject, so he starts talking, again, rapid fire, super fast, and difficult to write down. But the gist of it is that he asks if he can leave this season and go to the academy, which I now realize is the flight academy. And his uncle is like, I need you to help me out with the farm, but you can go next year. And Luke is really upset because he doesn't want to miss a whole year. And he's like, well, you have so many droids. And his uncle says that he really needs him during this season.
So we get his friends' names, which are Biggs and Tank. They've already gone to the academy.
Those are names?
Yep.
Oh, I thought those were just words he was throwing out. Okay.
No, those are names, Biggs and Tank. And then, Luke wants to go to the academy and he runs off. And then the little conversation that Beru and Owen have after Luke leaves is pretty interesting.
I actually did write down one quote that Beru says, and she says, Luke's not a farmer. He's got too much of his father in him, which I thought was a really interesting thing. And the uncle says, that's what I'm afraid of.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
very foreshadowy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we actually get what is a really stunning shot.
One of my favorite shots.
We see, I don't know if it's like two suns, two moons, a sun and a moon, but we see
two suns over Tatooine.
Yeah, very beautiful. And he's just kind of looking out and he's feeling really sad. There was actually one more thing. I didn't write down exactly what was said, but his uncle says when he's leaving the dinner table, where are you going? And he says, I'm not going anywhere, apparently, or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Which I thought was really angsty, but now kind of seeing the bigger picture a little bit more, I feel like it makes a little bit of sense that he's just upset that his uncle is keeping him here when he wants to go to this school, I guess, to be a pilot.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally understand where he's coming from there, but I did at first think he was being a little angsty for no reason.
Yeah.
So then he heads back over. I wasn't sure if he was originally intending to head back over to the droids, but he does something and C-3PO jumps out and he's like, don't deactivate me, which I was like, where is he that C-3PO is jumping out? I thought he was going to the robots to keep cleaning them.
Yeah, I think he was.
Oh, okay.
But
Something sneaky was going on. But yeah, so C-3PO actually says that R2-D2 has run off. And C-3PO says that he is on a mission for some reason. And he actually says that R2-D2 has always been problematic. And I was furious because he specifically said, not 5 minutes before, that he specifically has worked with R2-D2 before and he is a trustworthy unit. Then 5 minutes later, he's like, oh, he has never been trustworthy. So again, I'm over here being very suspicious of C-3PO.
Well, that's why I think C-3PO was like, see, look at everything I do for you. I'm even lying for you and telling people you're trustworthy. But I think this again shows that C-3PO is just doing his job. He's just doing what his owners say, whereas R2 is off doing whatever he wants. He's got way too much of a personality, way too much of an independent mind to be a good droid.
Yeah, which is actually funny because you would kind of expect it of the more humanoid droid, but no.
Yeah.
But Luke looks off into the horizon and he says he can't find R2-D2 and that they're going to have to go out and find him the next morning. And C-3PO isn't understanding why they can't just go out now. And Luke explains that it's too dangerous to go after him at night because of the sand people. So then we immediately cut to the next day. So there's not that much buildup of tension there. But we see the uncle, he's looking for Luke and he comes up to his wife and he asks, have you seen Luke this morning? And the aunt says that he had some errands to run, so he left early. And the uncle asks if he took the 2 droids with him, and she says yes. And he says something about them needing to be repaired by midday. And then we see Luke and C-3PO, and they're in a very cool little hovercraft ship thing, which it was really cool. It was like a car, but it was floating.
I think they might just be called cruisers, but I could be wrong about that.
So I thought that was very fun. They're looking for R2-D2, and the sand people are looking at them. So they do find R2-D2, and he starts beeping and freaking out, and C-3PO translates and says that there are people nearby, and Luke is like, oh no, it's the sand people, they're coming. So he's looking through his binoculars, which I don't know if they were specifically binoculars, but they were some form of those, and he sees the creatures in the distance. I don't think he said the name of them. He did probably.
Banthas.
Yeah. Didn't pick that
He said,
one up
oh,
either.
there's 2 banthas, but I don't see sand people. Oh, wait. Yes, there's a sand person.
And then one of them immediately jumps out right in front of him and knocks him out.
Yep.
So then R2-D2 hides away, and the sand people start looting Luke's ship cruiser thing. And then this weird hooded creature, who I found out is not so much of a creature, scares them off. He checks if Luke is still alive, and then he calls R2-D2 over and he's like, come here, little friend, don't be scared, which I thought was very cute.
Yeah, he was very sweet.
And he does take off his hood, and he is a man. And Luke wakes up and he's like, oh, Ben Kenobi, there you are. And I was thinking, this guy has to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, which he was. So again, I was right.
Yes, which he admits to immediately. He's like,
almost immediately.
Obi-Wan, that's me.
So Luke explains to him that R2-D2 is looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I wrote down Ben looks scared for a minute, and he says he hasn't heard that name in a long time, and he says he's not dead, he's me. So no mystery there. And then he says he doesn't remember ever owning a droid, which I thought was weird. I wasn't sure if that was sort of a way of him saying he has some lost memories or something, or if that droid isn't really his, but he was just programmed to find him.
Yes, is the second. He was just programmed to find him by Princess Leia.
Listen, he could have lost his memory. This could be a love story. We have no idea where this is going. So then Obi-Wan, should I just call him Obi or Obi-Wan?
Definitely don't call him Obi, but you can call him Ben if you want to. I feel like he is mostly referred to as Ben.
Really?
But don't call him Obi. Please don't call him Obi.
Why?
Nobody calls him Obi.
I wrote him down as Obi in the rest of my notes.
Ben is what he's definitely more referred to as.
I'm going to call him Obi.
Please don't. Nobody calls him Obi.
I want to know, can we do a poll on Twitter, please?
Oh,
I want to
gosh.
know if anybody would just casually refer to him as Obi, you know?
Okay, let's do it.
I think
I'm
that's
curious.
a good name. If I had a pet, I would name him Obi, assuming that Obi is a good guy.
At All Geek
Yes.
Podcast, let us know if anybody here has ever referred to Obi-Wan as just Obi.
For the remainder of this episode, I'm going to call him Obi. So, so Obi says that they... now I can't say it.
I can't do it. If you call him Obi, I'm going to laugh every time.
I'm cracking myself up. I don't even know why it's funny, but it's just so funny to see you react to me calling him that. But anyway, so he says that they need to get indoors to avoid the sand people, and they realize that C-3PO is missing, and then they immediately find him. There's like not very many tense moments in this movie so far. There's like a moment where they're like, oh no, something bad's about to happen, and then it immediately happens over and over again. So there's really not like a tense buildup of things. But yeah, so they immediately find C-3PO, and he is missing an arm, which they find immediately again.
And he's like, just leave me.
I was like, okay, I can get behind this, because he's like, just leave me here. I'm just dying anyway. And Luke is like, what is wrong with you? It's not even that dramatic. Like, just come with us. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly how I would act in the slightest inconvenient situation. So then they go to what I can only assume is Obi's house.
Good old Obi living in this cave.
Obi starts immediately just telling him all sorts of information.
Yeah, all the exposition.
Which I was a little confused by, because how long has he known this kid, and he's never told him any of this super important information about his dad? So I was like,
yeah, pretty much.
Little difficulty with the suspension of disbelief.
And then like all of a sudden with no provocation, he's just like, oh, you know what? Might as well tell you all this.
Yeah, so he's like, oh yeah, your dad was in the Clone Wars. He was a Jedi. And Luke is just like, what?
He's like, my dad was a spice trader. He's like, nope, he was actually a Jedi.
Yeah, just out of nowhere. Just like, let me just blow up your whole world.
And a pilot also, by the way. Heard you're also a pretty good pilot.
Oh yeah, he does say that.
Yeah.
So he says, yeah, you're a good pilot. And then he's like, your uncle lied to you, by the way. And then for some reason, randomly, I thought this was going to be important, but it turns out I don't think it's important. But C-3PO interrupts and he's like, hey, if you don't mind, I'm just going to shut down for a little while.
Yeah, it's not.
Why is this making me laugh so hard?
It sounds like he's going to get up and walk away, but then he just like deboots down. He's just like, boom.
I was thinking this has to be important. Maybe Obi is about to tell him something like really dangerous that it's important that C-3PO doesn't find out, or like maybe I don't know, something's going on, but then it just doesn't come up. So
nope.
I guess it's not important. So then Obi is like, oh, I have something that your dad wanted me to give you, which again, you waited this long? How old is this guy now? So I was annoyed about that. And he's like, yeah, it's a lightsaber. It was your dad's and he wanted you to have it, but your uncle said no. But you know what? Now that I've run into you randomly, I'm just going to give it to you. So I was a little annoyed about that. And then Luke gets really serious and he's like, can you tell me how my dad died? And Obi tells him that a Jedi named Darth Vader betrayed and murdered him. And he said Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force and he became evil. And he actually explains a little bit more because Luke isn't aware of what the Force is. And we find out that the Force is basically what gives Jedis their power. And he said, I wasn't 100% sure on this, but he said something about like how it's everything in the universe.
Yeah, so it's sort of just like an energy field that binds the galaxy together. It reminds me a lot of like chi, if you're familiar with that.
I was actually kind of getting that vibe.
Yeah. So the way that you were describing the Force in like episode 0 was that it was this magic power that the Jedi have, but actually what it is an energy field that the Jedi have the power to control.
Okay, so it's something that's a learned skill.
And it exists within every living creature and within the spaces between everybody. And yes, it's a learned skill.
Okay, so that's one prediction that is incorrect.
I mean,
from episode 0.
It was close.
It was close. I mean, it sounds a little magical.
Yeah, for sure. Because not everybody can control the Force.
But Darth Vader can control the Force.
And so can Jedis. And since Luke's father was a Jedi, maybe Luke himself is sensitive to the Force.
Although, sadly, Obi does tell him that the Jedi are all but gone.
Yeah.
So he does pretty much say that they're extinct. And then he's tinkering around with R2-D2 and Luke tries to explain that there's a message for him. Again, no tension at all. It immediately pops up and Obi's like, oh, got it. And they just start playing it. Did you happen to write down what the whole message was?
I didn't, but fun fact, Carrie Fisher, who played Princess Leia, memorized this and never lost it from her memory and would recite it 100%. Well, she's since passed away, but you know. Yeah. And even there was a memorial service for her that her daughter was speaking at, and her daughter also memorized the speech.
Oh, that gave me chills.
It was really beautiful. But essentially what it says is that Obi-Wan Kenobi, you fought with my father in the Clone Wars.
I think he actually said you served my father.
You served my father in the Clone Wars. That is exactly what she said. And she says there are special plans inside this R2 unit and you need to bring them to Alderaan to my father. He'll know what to do with them. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You are my only hope.
And then Obi immediately turns to Luke and he's like, you got to learn how to use the Force before you come to Alderaan with me, which both Luke and I were like, what? I'm not going with you. Yeah. Why would you randomly just ask that of me? And Obi's like, we need your help. Leia needs your help. And I think it's just because he could see that Luke was clearly lusting after Princess Leia, which I thought was a little hilarious because then Luke starts to question it and he's like, well, don't get me wrong, I hate the Empire, they're the worst, but there's nothing I can do about it. But you can tell that like now that his interest is piqued, he kind of does want to go. Yeah. And then he does offer to meet him halfway. So he says he'll take him to Anchorhead and hopefully he can pick up a ride from there. So meanwhile, we actually have a meeting of the the Empire. And I wrote down literally no idea what they're talking about. So I pretty much blanked out from the point at the beginning of this scene up until Darth Vader starts talking. They're like arguing about something that I have no idea about.
What's so funny is I also blacked out during this scene. But one thing that is important to note is before we get to the meeting, we do have a shot of the Star Destroyer entering the Death Star. We did see the Death Star for the first time.
Oh, I did not notice. Maybe I thought it was a planet.
Basically, they're just saying the Death Star isn't ready yet. They don't know if it's going to work. But like once it does work, you know, they'll be the most powerful in the galaxy. And then Vader sort of counters that and says that it doesn't matter how strong the Death Star is. Nothing is stronger than the Force. And one of the guys starts saying like, oh, keep your weird religion out of this.
And then Darth takes offense to that, and he starts choking out this guy without even touching him. And he's like, it's a shame you don't believe in the Force. And clearly showing the power, which I think is actually very interesting because I wouldn't have thought to describe the Force as a religion. I would assume it's more of a power. Religion to me is something that's a little bit more faith-based and not necessarily something that you can see and have proof of. So I thought it was really interesting that the man referred to it as that. And he even said something about like, keep your faith to yourself when this is a proven thing that fully exists and can be used right in front of him and is used.
The thing is, you know, the Jedi have been extinct for so long at this point that nobody's really seen the Force. It's just something that's whispered about. For these guys, it may have been the first time that they've seen the Force in action.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay, so that changes my perspective a little bit. But then one guy's like, Darth, let him go. And I wasn't sure. I thought that Darth Vader was like the main guy, so I'm surprised that he is taking orders from somebody else.
No, he's actually not the main guy, which is interesting too. The Emperor is actually the main guy.
Oh, Darth isn't the Emperor?
Darth is the Emperor's pupil.
Advisor.
We haven't met the Emperor yet.
Ooh, there's somebody more evil than Darth? Interesting. Well, anyway, then we get to pretty much the last scene of today's section, which is back to Luke and my pal Obi, and they come across the Jawa transport, and it's absolutely destroyed, and the little Jawas are just scattered along the ground, and I guess they're killed. And Luke thinks that it's the Sand People, and he's really upset about it. And Obi says, that's what we're supposed to believe, but it's definitely the Imperial soldiers. And he starts going over the reasons why, because he points out that the treads are next to each other, and the Sand People usually go in single file order. And he said that the shots were a little bit too perfect to be the Sand People. So he's saying, this is the Empire that's done this. And Luke immediately gets worried, and he's like, oh no, what if they find out who the Jawas sold the droids to? And then he runs back to his cruiser, and he immediately flies back over to his home, and it is burning. We see pillars of black smoke, and Luke steps out, and he looks a little bit closer, and there are two charred skeletons outside of the home.
Yeah.
I mean, his lack of reaction is a reaction in itself, that, you know, the shock and horror of it. But before you said it at the beginning of this section, I thought that this was a whole city, and I wasn't 100% certain that that was his aunt and uncle. I figured just for the sake of the story that it was, but now knowing that there's literally no other option, that's really sad.
It is really sad, yeah. Especially because he was so worried, like, that his uncle was going to be mad at him, and the last conversation that they had was kind of not really a great one of him sort of storming out on the dinner. So it wasn't a great way for him to leave things, but it does set our hero on his journey.
I was just going to say, the first thing I wrote down was, I guess he can go to Alderaan after all, which is a little callous of me, but we knew it was happening.
Yeah.
But anyway, that actually finishes up this section. We're, would you say, about a third of the way through the first movie?
Yeah, so we're actually going to do this movie in 3 sections. Originally, we were going to do 2, but 3 makes a little bit more sense because there is a lot of information.
I was a little overwhelmed.
I was a little overwhelmed. So yeah, we've got 3 sections for this film. We still have so much more to get to. Still so many more characters to meet, so much more action to happen, and I'm very excited.
I'm nervous. It's not at all what I thought in my mind that I don't know if this is a good indicator of what the movie's going to be like, but so far what I imagined in my mind is not at all what's happening on the screen. So I'm really curious to see what happens next.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind too, this was an extremely low budget film. The actors on this set were all kind of like, well, this is a fun little summer project we're going to do. Probably never going to hear from it again. And then it blew up to be arguably the biggest franchise of all time. And so this movie to the next movie and onwards, there's a huge budget shift, which you'll notice when we get to episode 5 for sure, compared to this film.
Okay, well, I'm excited for it. So let's move on. We'll see you guys next Thursday. Just keep in mind, we're filming all of these at the same time. Don't think that Leah just has this sickness for several weeks. Hopefully by the time you listen to it, she will be better.
No, I'm over the hump. The last 2 days were terrible, but for all of episode 4, the 3 parts that we're filming, I will have this nasally congested voice. But after that, for episode 5 and onwards, I will be in tip-top health, I promise.
Yay. Okay, so we will see you all next Thursday.
Bye.
You've been listening to the It's All Geek to Me podcast, hosted by Leah and Kelli. Make sure to hit subscribe in your favorite podcast player and give us a rating. You can also follow us on Twitter at All Geek Podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday. See you next week.